Israel's military says it is intensifying its fighting in the heart of Gaza City.
The troops are engaging in face-to-face combat with Hamas militants and looking to destroy the tunnel system in Gaza. Israel has extended its deadline to allow civilians to flee the northern part of the territory. Thousands have already left, many with nothing but the clothes they're wearing.
Meanwhile, top diplomats from the G7 nations gathered in Tokyo to discuss the war. The group is unanimously calling for a humanitarian pause in order to allow safe passage for displaced Palestinians.
Humanitarian pauses would advance key objectives: to protect Palestinian civilians, to increase the sustained flow of humanitarian assistance, to allow our citizens and foreign nationals to exit, and to facilitate the release of hostages.
CBS News foreign correspondent Debora Patta joins us now from Jerusalem. Deborah, Israel, as we mentioned, says its forces are now fighting in the heart of Gaza City. What more do we know?
Well, what we know essentially is that this is a war and that it is fought on a battlefield, and it is fought by emails and press statements. So what we know about what is going on there is essentially what we know from both sides fighting this war. Israel says that it has reached Gaza City, that it is calling on people to evacuate. We've seen those long, long lines of people leaving, fleeing from the north to the south, and these constant calls for a humanitarian pause as a result of that, because of the heavy fighting. Overnight, that fighting was really, really intense. And the Israel Defense Force saying that they have honed in on key Hamas targets in this area, and that they have, in fact, managed to kill one of the key Hamas leaders, but they haven't said where or actually how that, in fact, happened. What we do know also is that from Hamas's side, they are denying this. They are saying in their press statements that this is not the case at all. This is the fog of war, after all. And that is how we have to interpret these, because we cannot independently verify any of these claims.
A very important point. Deborah, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there will be no ceasefire without a hostage release. Is there any chance of this happening? And what does it mean for the nations that are calling for that humanitarian pause?
Well, I think Israel remains unconvinced about the need for a humanitarian pause. And Benjamin Netanyahu, as you've said, has repeatedly said there won't be a ceasefire unless there is some kind of hostage release. If you read the Israeli press, there's a lot of talk about ongoing negotiations brokered by Qatar to allow a 24 to 48-hour humanitarian pause in fighting to allow for some of those hostages to be released. It should be said that we've been hearing about imminent releases for quite some time now, and so far nothing has shifted. But certainly this time, that speculation is growing very, very loud. The situation is really opaque. It's now over a month since those hostages were taken, and only 4 people have been released in that time.
Deborah, the number of displaced people fleeing northern Gaza has increased as Israel's air and ground offensive intensifies. What is the situation looking like in southern Gaza?
Well, thousands upon thousands of people have been fleeing the violence. They are seen walking on wheelchairs, donkey carts, many with their hands raised in the air or holding white flags as they push towards the south. They haven't all reached there yet. It's obviously driven partly by the relentless bombing in the north, which has been non-stop, flattening entire neighborhoods, and heartbreaking stories really of entire families who've been killed in the bombings. But the other reason is that people need food and water. They are running out of food and water. And when we say that the situation is dire, it's not an idle threat. It's not an exaggeration. The situation is dire. They are running out of food and water, so they run to the south in search of safety and in search of sustenance. There's a trickle of aid coming in, but as one aid worker said, there's an ocean of need right now in Gaza. And when, people keep on saying we don't know how much longer we can go on for, it is a very worrying situation indeed. Even in the south, which is supposed to be safer, there is still a lot of bombing going on in that area as well, so it's not always that safe. And, of course, people have nowhere to stay. They're running out of shelters as well. That's why the United Nations is saying enough is enough. And its humanitarian experts are saying the time is running out to prevent what they're calling a genocide.
All right, Debora Patta, thank you.